opportunity to interview different folks, guides, fly shop owners, manufacturers, competition anglers, and I want to get right to the heart of a question that I think that folks want to know. And David, we'll start with you. If you had only two flies to fish the Clinch River tomorrow, which two would they be and why?
There's two flies that I personally think I can catch fish any day of the year on the Clinch River with. One's going to be a pheasant tail nymph, and I might cheat a little bit and roll a pheasant tail nymph and a split case sulfur into the same category because I kind of use those interchangeably. They're both imitating a sulfur nymph, and there's plenty of sulfur nymphs in that river. The other fly that I really just don't want to be stuck without really on any tailwater, but especially on the Clinch. It's been my best fly. It's landed my biggest client fish over the years. It's just done a lot of good things for me, but it's a micro tubing midge, and it's just super streamlined, super simple. It was just so quick to tie. But I think one of the coolest moments I ever had on the Clinch was I was guiding on low water, and I had a guy catch this really pretty, like 18 or 20-inch male rainbow trout. I had this nice kind of kiped up jaw, just beautiful fish on that microtubing midge. And we got that fish in the boat, and I opened his mouth to pull that little midge out. And I looked on his tongue, and I about pulled the hook out of his tongue before I realized it wasn't the hook I was looking at. And I pulled it out, and I laid that tubing midge right next to the thing that was on his tongue. And they were an absolute dead ringer for each other. I mean, it couldn't have been more perfect if you tried to. So I kind of took a fly that was already a major confidence pattern for me and just put it into that next level where I really don't want to be without it. And I know I can catch fish on it.
Yeah, and those things come in so many, you can make them in so many different colors.
Yeah, so much you can do with them. You can thicken them by putting a thicker thread base. You can slim them down by stretching that tubing. You can change bead colors. I mean, there's just so much you can do with that fly. So it's pretty neat pattern. So
that is a great pattern. Pheasant tails is, well, you know how I feel about those.
Yeah, you don't fish those. I've heard you don't use those ever.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. So gosh, I can't believe you even mentioned the tubing fly, and then you gave everybody the secrets to it if they listened close, which is pretty cool. So, Pat, I'm gonna move on to you and ask you the same question. If you only had two flies to fish tomorrow, what would it be?
The Clinch is two different rivers on different water levels, low water and high water. And we change up our flies a lot depending on the flows. But I'm going to kind of piggyback on David Knapp. I would say a pheasant tail, size 16, size 18. David and I were fishing out there in January a couple of years ago, and they were eating sulfur dries on the surface, and it was pretty darn cold, and sulfurs were coming off pretty well. And so it's one of those flies that on low water or on high water, I feel pretty confident that I can get people on fish on a pheasant tail of some sort. I can change the bead color depending on the day. I can change the size. And then also, just like David, it would be a midge. There are tremendous amount of midges on that river. It is amazing how many big fish eat such small flies. I was just explaining that to someone at my church because I actually had a midge in my pocket on Sunday morning. And they said, those big fish will eat that small fly. I said, absolutely. If there is a trillion of those things coming down the river, you betcha they will eat those. So on that, I normally stick with like an 18 to 20. Sometimes I go down as 22. If I have to go any smaller than 22, I'd rather just stay at home.
Yeah, exactly. Isn't that the truth? Yeah, 22 wouldn't do me any good because I could never get it on the tippet anyway. So know that it would be any good for me. So, well, let's go ahead and kick this thing off from high atop the world headquarters of Southeastern Fly. This is the Southeastern Fly podcast. Thanks for joining us on this episode. Feel free to share this with your friends and your fishing partners. Hit the like, click the follow. Sign up for the Southeastern Fly newsletter and get a jump on upcoming events and episodes. It is available to sign up anywhere you listen to this podcast right now. Just click on the show notes and All you got to do is fill out the your email, and that's it. Maybe put a first name in there if you want to, and last name if you want to, and it comes straight to me. Nobody else gets a hold of it at all. It's just all straight to me, and then you get that newsletter back. So, who are our guests today on this episode about fly fishing the Clinch River in Tennessee? The first is a longtime friend, previous guest on the podcast 3 times. He's the owner of Trout Zone Anglers. Please welcome to the podcast, David Knapp. David, thanks for stopping back by for a third time.
Thanks for having me again. I always enjoy it.
I guess it'd be the 4th time that you'll be here.
I'm losing track.
Yeah.
somewhere in there.
And every time, David brings good information, and he's a lot of fun to fish with. And been a good friend. We've been fishing together for a long time, since he was working at Little River Outfitters. I think that's when we started, and we actually fished the other day. So our second guest, I've known for about 7 to 10 years, somewhere in there, I think. He's been featured on other folks' podcasts, Dad's on the Fly. He is a guide at Trout Zone Anglers. Please welcome to the podcast, Pat Tully. Pat, thanks for joining us, man.
Thank you, David. Looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
You can find both these guys at troutzoneanglers.com. And this is a Wisdom from the Guides episode. And I want to thank Miles, who asked me, I want to say a couple of years ago, but it was probably the first year that we did Southeastern Fly. I saw him on the Caney, and he said, "Hey, can you do an episode on the Clinch?" And I said, "Sure." And every year it's on my list, but things just don't always work out. We get other things going on and get other guests that have to come in at a certain time. So finally, Miles, here you go. Here's your Clinch River episode. Most of y'all know that I fished the Clinch when I lived in Carnes or Knoxville. And Pat, David, and myself, we were able to share a boat on the Clinch just the other day. That's been a 2-year ordeal. That it is amazing how hard it is to get 3 calendars to line up to get out on the river. And I kind of knew, guys, that if we didn't get this done in the spring, it might be December before we can get on the boat together. And I didn't want this podcast to wait. Thankfully, I was at Little Rivers the other day, or maybe a month ago, and Pat and David, or Pat came in for my fly time demonstration and just kind of said, "Hey, we need to get this together." And I said, "Well, sure, just text me a date." So he texted me some dates, and we worked it out. And then David was off that day too, and so glad that we were. Man, I was glad we fished together. It was just a great day. I learned more about the river, I think, the other day than I did the entire time that I lived up there. And we had high water. You can see the bottom in some places, but it was really tough to fish the bottom if you didn't know it. They were very kind, gave me the front seat of the boat, which I appreciate very much. We floated some sections that I hadn't floated before. So I think I want to start this off just by talking about the geology around Clinton. Clinton is the town that's closest to where we fished, and it's made of long parallel valleys and mountains through there and ridges. And the dominant rock types around that area are limestone and dolomite. I think I'm saying that right. Anyway, limestone's mostly made of calcium carbonate, and it forms from accumulated shell skeletons and microscopic remains of marine organisms, similar to like corals and stuff like that. Dolomite is a calcium magnesium carbonate, and it's like limestone, but it's got magnesium in it too. So you're asking yourself, what in the world? Why is he telling me this? Because if you think about that type of rock, it's good for fish's bone and skeletal development. And it's really good for muscle function. And it also does some things for their reproductive systems. But those two things, bone and skeleton and muscle function, are the two biggest things that I'm thinking of here. It's like a big fish eating a little fish. They get those bones. They eat the bones too. They digest them. That gives them calcium. That helps them grow, helps them be a little stronger. So I can attest that something's going on over there, because those fish are not only, we caught nice fish, but not only were they nice fish, they were powerful fish, and they were beautiful fish. I mean, they really, really look different. So, and the area's also got shale and sandstone in it. Um, so with a bit of that background and God's handiwork, I want to start with the river bottom. So this is a river that's probably best to know the bottom if you're going to fish it and fish it properly. So we'll start with Pat on this one. Can you tell us about the characteristics of the river bottom?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of shoals on that river, a lot of ledges. I've never seen a river that goes from just a couple, 2 feet to 8 feet on the backside of one of these ledges or shoals. I have a saying on the boat that if we're not snagging, we're not bragging. I shared that with you guys a couple times. And that's because we got a nymph pretty deep and we will hit those shoals, we will hit weed beds, we will hit stuff. But then 1 second later, we'll drop into a, 6 foot hole going down at 6,000 cubic feet per second. So we got to get those flies down nice and deep. So that's really one of the craziest things to me, especially if you're a wade angler. You want to really be careful. That water is crystal clear. And there's been several times where I'll jump out a boat to net a fish on low water or revive a fish or something. And I'll be like, oh, I think that's knee deep. And then it'll go up to my belly button.
Yeah.
And it's, 48 degrees, 52 degrees. My client for the day is like, what are you doing? I'm not sure. I don't know. So there's just tremendous depth and troughs and shoals and ledges that we are fishing. And when I'm rowing my boat on high water, in my head, I am envisioning what the bottom of the river looks like. Not because I have electronics, but because I spent a lot of time on the river. I was on that river over 100 days last year. A lot of those guiding, but also just David Knapp knows any day off I had, kids are home for school, and I got to go take them somewhere. Let's go to the river. Let's go spend some time on the river. Let's go learn something about the river. So I think that's probably one of the biggest characteristics. It's also tremendous weed beds in certain sections of the river. I mean, just mats and mats and mats of weed beds, different kinds of weed beds. Some weed beds that smell like rubber. I know seem to hold more of the bugs, at least the worms. That's what we picked up the last couple of years. So when you snag bottom and you pick it up and it smells like rubber, you're fishing the right water. So those are a couple of the characteristics that I think that makes that river unique.
David, how about you? What are your thoughts on that?
I think something else that river really has going for it, that in some ways makes it actually a lot harder to find good fish, is the amount of wood that's in that river. And the interesting thing that river in terms of wood is we all expect wood right on those banks. If you're floating down in tailwater, you're guaranteed there's wood on those banks. And there's plenty of wood on the banks of the Clinch, but there is so many midstream logs, and some of them you'll see, some of them you don't know they're there until you snagged them when you're deep nymphing or streamer fishing or whatever you're doing. And historically, the Clinch has been a really good brown trout river. It's never been huge on numbers of browns, but there's always been some good ones. And the state record came out of the Clinch. And I think that wood is one of the big reasons. Browns really need wood to thrive and survive and all that. And I think that wood really does it. And now the flip side of that, I think the wood, Pat maybe agrees or doesn't agree, but it's a little maddening to fish around, because when you're on, one generator or two generators or whatever you're on, fishing out of the boat, and you're just kind of deep nymphing, blind covering water, is that wood's coming, and unless you've memorized every single log in the river, which we're working on, we're trying to remember them all, but unless you know every single one, you're going to catch some wood while you're nymphing down there. It's guaranteed it's going to happen. And kind of like what Pat was saying, like if you're not hanging up a little bit, you're probably in the wrong spot. And so I'll tell clients, like, we'll be drifting down the side of the bank, for example, and I'm like, I know there's a log coming, I know it's right in there, let's drift that out just a little more. One of my favorite fish I had caught last year with a client, we were drifting down on top of this huge midstream root ball with this big log coming off the back side of it. And his strike indicator was just about to come over the top of that root ball. And I was literally opening my mouth to say, pull those flies out. And his indicator starts to dip. And I'm like, oh no, I waited just that split second too long. Cause as a guide, you're pushing that envelope a little bit. You're trying to get him as close as you can to give every opportunity. I was like, I waited too long and I knew it was my fault. I'm like, we're hung up. And I said, is that a fish? And he goes, uh-huh. And his eyes were big as saucers, man. And I was like, oh. And then at that moment, it started swimming up the river. And I was like, oh. And then, it's like rowing for the next 20 minutes, chasing this fish all over. And it's a big old fish, big rainbow. But, if you're not getting right up alongside that structure, you're missing out on a lot and you will lose flies. That's the thing. That's one reason I like guide flies. I talked about that tubing midge, for example. You tie flies that are easy to tie really fast, don't take any time at all to tie, and it doesn't hurt quite as bad losing them. If you've spent an hour trying to tie this articulated streamer and you lose it, it's like, oh, that's a little painful, And sometimes you got to fish that stuff, but you do got to get close to that structure. So the other piece of structure that Pat talked about, weed beds. He talked about those big ledges, those shoals. The other thing on the clinch that I've noticed is super, super important. And this is kind of a gimme. This is like, like a softball. This is easy for me to pick out and say because it's pretty straightforward. But it's just depth changes, and they don't have to be these real hard depth changes like those shoals. Sometimes it's just a real gentle, slow drop that goes from, an average of 3 feet deep to an average of 7 feet, and it happens over enough distance that it's just kind of this easy, slow drop. But invariably, if that water's slowly getting deeper and there's flow coming over it, there will be a bunch of fish sitting there every single time. And that's probably on that river. I don't care if it's low water or high water. If I have to go find a fish, that's probably my first type of water to go look in, is those slow, gradual depth changes like that. And, abrupt depth changes can be great too. I love them. Sometimes, I always tell people look for the little pots in between the riffles or in between the weed beds or between the ledges or whatever. And those are great. But those gentle transitions are some of my favorites.
Yeah. That's almost like a gravel bar transition, isn't it?
Yeah, very much like that.
One of the things that I saw the other day on one particular section that we were in that alerted me to how these shoals are was there's pieces of log and wood, including the parts of the root ball. They're just out in the middle of the river, just sitting there. And you don't necessarily get that on a river. I'd say in Middle Tennessee, you don't get that a lot, but they're just sitting up on those shoals. And, eventually I'm sure that the water will get high enough and maybe they'll get off. But they're running 2 generators the other day and those logs were just sitting there. And I thought, okay, there's got to be a shoal there, something holding it.
There's one log on the upper river that's been there since our shuttle driver was a kid.
Yeah, everybody talks about the log on the backside of Miller Island. We were talking to Clark one day. He's like, yeah, when I was a kid, I'd go canoeing through there and that log was there. Like, wow.
Yeah.
I think it's like petrified at this point. I think it's just like turned into a rock or something.
Yeah. Let's stop a minute and talk about Clark. What a cool dude.
Yeah, I love Clark.
Oh, he's the best.
He is the best, dude. He was so much fun to listen to as we went from the ramp to the river and kept us entertained. He knew everybody at the ramp when we got there too.
Yep.
By their first names. And knew everybody's car that was there, which most shuttle drivers are kind of know people, but he knows people.
He does.
And just super entertaining dude.
Yeah.
Really, I enjoyed him very much. And, you can't, we were with him, 15 minutes maybe at the max.
Yeah.
And I was like, dang, he's like an old friend already. So, yeah, what a good dude.
He definitely helps start the trip in the right direction.
Yes.
I mean, as soon as we meet him with our client for the day,
kind of sets that mood a little bit.
Yep. And he's been on vacation this week. So,
yeah,
I've been missing him. Yep.
Well, y'all got a great program going there from what I saw. It's
thank you.
Keep it up. Yeah. Well, let's talk about flows. I like certain flows. I mean, if I've got a trip somewhere and got a guest on the boat that I really want to get on a fish really bad, and if the flows work out, man, it's just, I know it's going to be a good day. And with the boat, we can hit about every flow that you want that's worth fishing. obviously some flows are better than others, and sometimes things work out differently. But when I'm guiding somebody, I want to make sure that I give them the best day I can, and I'm like always hoping for that perfect flow, you know. But that's on my rivers here in Middle Tennessee. I know what the good flows are there, but I when y'all said two gens, I was like, oh, okay, so we're going to throw streamers, and we finally did toward the end of the day. But I never would have thought that two generators would fish like it did. And it was crazy. So I don't know. I know y'all have explored all those different levels. Pat, you for sure, because you were out there a bunch. But what flows make this river fish the best? Let's start with David this time.
Man, I'm going to cheat just a little bit and start off. I'm just going to say there's no bad flow on that river. And there's things
I
that
would
I
believe that.
love about every flow. So, like for my personal fishing and some of my clients, I really like just dead low water or low water with just that 1 hour pulse coming through, which just raises it a foot or two, gives you a little current, and that's it, you know. The thing I will say about that low flow, though, it's the most challenging flow that river has, and it pushes your skill set the most. So it's not for everybody, right? There's going to be some people that are going to have a hard time on that flow. Um, Probably my favorite guide flow is going to just be one generator. For the most part, there's things that I love about zero. There's things I love about two generators. But for just any random person, the average person out there with me, one generator is probably the easiest to get any person on a fish kind of a thing. You don't, have to sling a 1,000 foot deep nymph rig like you do on two generators, Yeah, you had fun with that. I'm sure you
I
stopped pretty
did.
good
I
there.
did. I was hoping you put more leader on there.
Yeah, maybe a second cannonball for split shot,
Yeah, maybe.
So two generators, it's kind of like zero. It takes a little more skill, a little bit more ability. I think we can get anybody to do it, but it does take a little more of a learning curve. But one generator, if you can just cast a little bit, you get a little bit out of the boat, like we can catch some fish. I think it opens up a little more variety with our flies too. I kind of feel like um, the low water is just that classic midge fishing, which I personally love. Like I said, I've got some clients that love, but it's not for everyone. And I recognize it. Not everybody wants to throw a 15-foot leader and 6X and a size 20 fly.
Right, right.
But that one generator, it's a little bit easier. You go up a little bit size wise on your tippet. You can go a little bit bigger on your flies. It's that current's moving a lot of food around. So the fish are happy. They're content. They're, feeling safe. And so it's to me, it's probably the best flow, and best is so relative. I hesitate to even say that, but
Yeah.
one generator is a good flow, I think.
Yeah, I've enjoyed that flow when we fished the last however many years ago
Right.
it was.
Right.
And I fished in a lot of low water, uh, which is, back in my wading days when I was living over there, I was wading. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah, I fished it there. But yeah, the other day was the first time I'd really fished. I've been on it on two and fished it a little bit, but not like we did the other day. So, Pat, what flows do you like that you think this makes this river fish the best?
Yeah, similar to David. So when someone books me 6 months ahead of time, it's hard to predict what TVA is going to do. I generally know a day before, and sometimes they change it. So as a fly fishing guide, I want to be prepared for anything. I was explaining to someone the other day that on that river, I think it's more important than in any river, but you hear the expression, the ball was in their court, the ball was in their court. Well, on that river, we want as many balls in our court as opposed to the fish's court to be successful on that river.
Right.
So on low water, in my opinion, we have more balls in their court, the fish's court. The water's low.
For sure.
We're using 6X. Some people are using 7X. We're using small flies. We got to cast 60 feet. We got to drift. I was anchored up one time and just messing around. Fish were all around me, and I made one cast, and that line hit the water. And those fish they're still swimming. And that was probably 8 months ago. Scared. So we don't have a lot of balls in our court. I really like that low water. It is extremely tricky. I have some clients that love it. One of my clients, Rob, really enjoys it because he's a great caster, and he get it out there, and it's a lot of teamwork from him and I. Because when you set the hook on that size 18 midge, you don't know if it's an 8-inch wild rainbow or a 24-inch wild rainbow, or 30-inch brown trout. I mean, it could be either of those. So I really do enjoy that. But not a lot of people, that's that next level. I took some people out this week that have never really fished on Monday, 2 generators. So there's a lot of balls in our court. The problem is we're nymphing so deep, and it was so windy that it was challenging. It was very challenging for them, and they did well. We caught some fish. But I'm going to agree with David. That one generator, you can read the water, you can see what's going on. You really don't have to, as long as you don't hit a tree or the bank, most of the shoals and everything you can go right over with a drift boat. So you can read the water, you can kind of get an idea what it looks like, but also you have a lot of balls in your court. I started really liking trying to stay ahead of one generator, so on the leading edge, because I have low water still. We can throw dry droppers, the chubby or something, and a pheasant tail, or a midge or a worm or something, and still have water below me and above the fish. So it's kind of like I've kind of realized that that's kind of like the happy medium, either that rising from 0 to 1 or just straight one generator. When it's one generator, that's when everyone's out. You don't realize there's that many drift boats in Knoxville until one generator, and that's when they all come. It's like, wow, they all buy them like yesterday.
Yeah, right.
The Clinch is one of those interesting rivers that I think all tailwaters do it to some extent, but I feel like the window is a little wider on the Clinch, where when that generation first starts to hit, sometimes the reason I know that generation's starting to hit is because the fish have turned on. We're like fishing dead low water, and we're like getting a fish here, maybe one over there, and then all of a sudden it's like boom, boom, boom. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then I look up and I see that water, that ripple in the water. I'm like, oh,
Yep.
that water's hitting us, and those fish are just feeding like crazy. And I think that probably happens on all tailwaters to some extent. I think the timing is a little more dramatic on the Clinch, perhaps, though, where it's just so noticeable,
Before the fish start eating, the temperature in the summer drops about 10 degrees when that cold air starts coming down the river.
Yeah, you feel that wall of air conditioning coming.
Feel that wall of air before the fish start feeding, and you're like, okay, it's game time. Let's go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Don't get any tangles, please.
One of the things that was just said was talking about teaming up with a client and fishing midges and stuff like that. And that's about, other than the movement of a saltwater fish, that's as close to being a saltwater guide as you're going to be, I think, because you're, cast right there. It's almost like I stand up. I'm standing up there like, okay, we're going to do this. I need you to do this. I need you to, and then when it finally decides it wants to eat the midge for whatever reason, a lot of times, if it's somebody new, they don't even realize what's going on.
Yeah.
And then they're like, okay, it's moved 2 foot, dude. You probably should set the hook now.
Yep.
And like, I did, and how many of us have done the same thing?
Oh, absolutely.
I didn't even see it moving. You're so focused on it that if it's a slow movement across, if they eat and go sideways, just kind of drag that top fly if you're fishing a dry dropper, and people never see it. But boy, it sure is fun, and it's like something clicks with both of you at that time, and it's like a bond is formed almost. Like, hey, this is cool.
Absolutely.
So let's move on. I want to get geeky just a minute on fish food, and I know that first question we delved into food a little bit with the flies and the midges and the different sulfurs and things, but every river usually has a primary food source or a few primary food sources. So, and I want to bring in, I don't want to talk about just bugs. I want to talk about maybe if we can bring in another source other than bugs that the Clinch would be known for. What insects dominate year round, and throw in one crustacean or fish or minnow or something like that. Let's start with Pat.
Let's talk about the sulfurs earlier. They hatch a lot. We'll start seeing those hatch next month, April. They can last all the way through the summer. I've seen them, like I said, earlier in the winter. You go through those weed beds. So at low water, anytime I get out of the boat and help someone go to the bathroom or something, I'm digging through weed beds, looking at what the bugs are. I've done some throat samples, but sulfur nymphs, definitely one of them. And then I think the thing you see the most of is scuds. Those weed beds are just covered in scuds. I mean, there are so many of them, and those fish can just gorge as much as they want to, especially on higher flows. I personally think, and I don't know if this is right, but I personally think that some of those fish are so vibrant because of the amount of scuds they eat, kind of like a flamingo. I mean, a scud's like a big shrimp. I could be wrong. I know that hatcheries will put, some shrimp type stuff in their pellets to feed them, and they'll get them real pretty. I could be wrong on that, but that's my personal thought process on that. I've probably talked to David Knapp about that, but there is just a tremendous amount of scuds in that river. So if you go through a weed bed, and they're all throughout the river, they're not just at the top of the river or at the bottom of the river. All 11 miles, there are scuds everywhere. So I think that does a lot for the fishery.
I know the fish are something. They're man, they're vibrant.
Yeah,
The ones that we caught were. And that I was up during the cicada hatch for a day up there and floating it. And the ones that we caught then, that was what, May of last year, somewhere in there, June, something like that. I can't remember now, and we caught some. But I think these were more vibrant than those were. And maybe it's a difference in the water temperature too. Could be that. But those the other day, they really were something. I was talking to my wife. I was talking to my wife about it when we got home. I was like, look at these pictures.
yeah,
Just look at these fish.
they are so pretty. So I got one more, and then I'll let David go. But
Okay.
the other day out of low water, we caught a bunch of fish, and a lot of them were small, wild rainbow trout, 4 inches to 8 inches. Those fish spawn. I've been told they spawn 4, 5, 6 months of the year. There's always, not always, but there's lots of spawning behavior on our wild rainbows on that river, and I think it's one of the reasons the river is incredible. So oftentimes, if we're throwing streamers, I don't get paid to throw streamers a whole lot, but I'll do it with some friends. We talked about it. I'll do it on my own sometimes, but some kind of rainbow trout, small rainbow trout pattern. I think a lot of people don't think that rainbow trout will eat other rainbow trout. It's mostly a brown trout type of thing. But if you think that, you're wrong. At least on that river.
Yeah.
Those rainbows, they're mean. They're angry. I was out there one day, and caught my personal best last year on a rainbow trout, small rainbow trout pattern. And I mean those big wild rainbows, which is why I'm there. Those big browns are incredible, but those big wild rainbows I think are just amazing and such a special fish on that river. So for me, sulfurs, scuds, and small rainbow trout.
Excellent answer, Pat. All right, David, you're up.
Yeah. A couple other things. We already talked about the midges. One thing I'll throw in there with midges, I have a document that the late John Thurman did. He did a study on the trout diet on the Clinch River, and pretty thorough study. It like anything, probably wasn't perfect, but it was very, very thorough in my opinion. And he showed that midges comprise over 70% of the fish's diet in that river. So I know we've already talked about them, but I don't think we can overemphasize midges for that river. I think the tricky thing with midges is the necessity to have 1,000 different patterns or something, because there's days that you'll go through 10 colors, and all finally on that 11th color, okay, we've got it now. And I'll quit. I'll get off my soapbox on the midges now and go on. But kind of along with the scuds, I also mentioned sow bugs. There's a ton of sow bugs in that river, and a lot of times I don't look closely enough. I'm kind of seeing these things at a glance in the water and not looking closely enough to be like, yep, that was definitely a sow bug. That was definitely a scud. But I kind of lump them all in the same category. But they do look a little different. The scud is kind of that curved shank, looks kind of thick and like a shrimp almost, and the sow bug's almost like this flat, almost like a flat roly-poly type thing, and so I tie my sow bugs more on straight shanked hooks and my scuds more on curved shanked hooks. I don't know whether the fish care or not, but it's kind of that whole tie flies to catch fishermen instead of fish sometimes.
Yeah, right.
And then sulfurs, Pat talked about sulfurs. There's a really good population of black flies on that river, and I think that's one reason that microtubing midge I mentioned in the very beginning question is so useful, because I call it a microtubing midge, it at bare minimum doubles really well as a black fly larva, and it's conceivable that that's strictly what they're taking it as. I don't know, but another thing that was really interesting in that study from John Thurman was the snail population of that river. They're seasonally, I think in the fall, they comprise like 30% of the trout's diet or something. I can't remember. I'd have to go look that number up. And they're tiny, tiny snails. I mean, they're real small, but you'll see fish rooting around on the bottom. And if they're not eating, a scud or a sow bug down there, they're probably rooting around for snails. I don't remember if Pat mentioned caddis, but there is some good caddis hatches. And every year it seems like that caddis hatch happens at a little different time, and that has to do with when the water's low and it's high and all that. But there's some neat caddis hatches, and everybody on that river, I think, knows I'll use the fancy word annelids, which is a fancy word for worms. There's aquatic worms, and the interesting thing with those worms, if you go up above the weir dam in the middle of the summer and grab a handful of weeds and start piling through that handful of weeds, is you start realizing it's chock full of worms, and they look like little threads. They're super skinny. I'm convinced that a lot of us aren't even using very thorough imitations of them, because all the imitations that we tie as tyers and fly fishermen are too thick to imitate those natural worms. But the river has a fair number of those as well, I think. And then last one that I'll mention that's kind of a personal favorite, going back to the streamer game that Pat was talking about. You got those baby rainbows, but there's also a really good sculpin population in the river. There's also shiners. There's a bunch of bait fish in the river. And anytime you have brown trout, I'm thoroughly convinced if there's sculpins around, that's going to be one of their favorites. So when I'm trying to catch a big brown on that river, as often as not, I'm usually throwing some form of a sculpin pattern. They're dark. They're usually, olive, black, brown, something in that range, some dark, but a lot of sculpins in that river.
I would agree with that. I was on the White one time, and we were loading the boat up, and I was with my uncle, my grandfather, and a friend of our family. And at the ramp were these two 20-somethings, and they had a hook, and they were sitting right by the ramp, right off the bank, and catching sculpins. They were just like with a little piece of worm. And of course, my grandfather's like, "Where are y'all going? What are y'all doing? What are y'all catching?" He said, "We're catching these little sculpins, and we're going to go right up here on this inside bend and catch big brown trout." And of course, my grandfather was like, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah." They showed him a picture of it, of one of them, and I thought he was going to unload everything back off the trailer, and we were going to go. I really did, because just so many big fish up there. I knew there were a lot because we had just come off that section of river, and I was sitting up front on the front of the boat, just sitting there and looking, and golly, there was a ton. And they said, "Yeah, we're going to go right up there on the inside bend." And I thought, we just came from there and we didn't get nothing. So yeah, I think you're right, David. They were all big browns that they had pictures of, and that's what they were after. And they were just using those sculpins is all they were using. Now it's flat out it, dude. They weren't after nothing else. So, good answers, guys. I like that. I'll tell you what I like the best. The best flies. I know that y'all talked a lot about that, but as far as flies go, that matches what y'all talk about. I just like to fish whatever y'all happen to tie on the end of my fly line, or in my tippet. So. Oh, and I've waded that river a whole bunch. I used to wade it a lot of evenings when the water was off, if the water was off, and then a lot of Saturday mornings, get up there at daylight and wait it until the water came on. And I've waded that whole upper section up there many times. And if I wanted to, if I didn't have a lot of time, I'd go to the weir and fish there just so I knew that I could get out, in time. But there are a lot of pieces of water there that I probably overlooked a lot of times. So I got at the time. Now I'm fishing just if you come to it, let's fish it. There's a way to fish it, pretty much. I don't like to move through too much water unless it's just been slow through there for me. Over long periods of time, slow. Not like, well, it was slow the other day. I'm talking about multiple trips down the river. It's been slow in that particular area. It's usually not because of the type of water, but I think sometimes we head to our type of water that we know how to fish, that we've honed our skills on, so to speak. And if we're on a new river or on our home river, a lot of times we'll go there. Folks will go there and never leave. Like you see the same person in the same hole every time you see them, and you wonder, if you would go upstream a football field, it would be different. But there's fish up there, and so I think I want to ask David first, then Pat will go to you. But what type of water gets ignored by wading anglers the most?
I think a lot of people on the Clinch shy away from those really slow, featureless flats because they are so challenging, which kind of works out fine because that's actually my favorite water. I love the challenge of those flats and, throwing a 15 or 16-foot leader and tiny stuff. The thing, though, that I think people are missing with those flats that obviously making those long casts and casting long leaders is a skill that you just have to practice to get better at. And so sometimes you just you got to push your skill set and just try. Even if you blow the fish, you got to try. But the thing I think they're missing is those flats, in my opinion, provide some of the best sight fishing opportunities on the river because it's crystal clear. If you can get there on a day where it's not windy, you can see everything in the flat. And that's why those flats are so hard to fish and why those fish are so spooky. But a lot of people are I think just intimidated. They just like, oh, I just can't catch fish in there. It's like, yeah, you probably can. I probably can't. None of us probably can. But if and when it's fishing,
boy, if you did.
They fish so good. And there's days I had a day, and this is probably 5 years ago or more, where I had a guy where we had, like Pat said, we had scheduled this months out in advance, and you don't know what you're going to get. And we had this beautiful low water day in April. It wasn't too windy. And I mean, I want to say he caught 25 or 30 fish waiting around Miller's Island. And most of them were in those flats that most people will just walk by because they're hard. And he was a good angler. He was making some long casts. We were getting some good drifts, and that's all necessary. But if you just walk by those flats and say, "Man, that's too hard of water. I can't do that," you missed out on that good 30 fish day. And for whatever reason, that day, that's where those fish were, and they were feeding like crazy. And if you were patient, they would eat. The one, that's kind of the obvious answer to me. I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to even hone in on a little more specific water. Though, is a lot of times you get those flats, you have these edges that look like nothing, and I call it frog water. And a lot of times we look at frog water, we say there's nothing in there, and when you say it gets ignored by most anglers, I was like, oh, that's what all those other anglers ignore. And I was like, wait a second, what do I ignore? Where am I blowing fish out of? And it's those shallow edges that I know hold fish because I've blown so many fish out of them. But it's those edges of those flats where you're like, oh, those fish are over in that deep water. They're over in that 3-foot water, that 4-foot water. And like, why are there wakes continuously coming out of this 6 inches of water over here? They're over there eating midge pupa and midge larvae and midge this and midge that, There's all kinds of fish now. So if anybody figures out how to go catch those fish and remember they're there before they blow them out, I'd love to know, because I always don't remember until I see that wake cruising out of the skinny water at the edges of those flats. And it's so frustrating, but there's a lot of good fish sitting in that water.
There's some, I can think of one particular place on one of the rivers here that is just like you're talking about. And over to the left is the bank, and it's kind of cut, but on the right, it's like it comes up off the flat into some skinny water.
Yep.
And I fished it before and caught a fish or two out of it, but the sexy water's over here.
Yep.
That's the whole problem. It's where they should be right here in this 2 or 3 or 4 foot water versus over here in this 6 inches to 10 inch water.
And for some reason, those fish didn't read the manual. I don't understand.
No, they did not. They did not. And I've left the manual there for them to read.
Yeah.
They still don't read it. Oh, Pat, what about you? What do you think the wading angler might look past?
It's funny that David and I didn't talk about this, but I wrote down frog water as well. I am amazed by wading on that river or pushing the boat over to the edge to jump off so someone can go to the bathroom, and just how many fish we spook out of just the edges. I mean, nothing water. Those fish are midging. I don't know what they're doing sometimes. And it's amazing to me that they're even in there because that water's crystal clear. And then there is tremendous amount of birds of prey on that river. I mean,
yes, there are.
There are blue herons
Yes.
everywhere. There are bald eagles. There are ospreys. I mean, yesterday, I felt like I was on a birding tour the whole time. Like osprey, we saw golden eagle. I mean, it's just like it never ends, especially with blue herons. Now the cormorants are back. So it's crazy to me that a 10 or 15 or 20-inch fish is right on the edge because if a cormorant can't catch it, a bald eagle can. I agree with David on that. The frog water. I don't know how to catch them. I know how to spook them pretty well over there. I'm thinking of this one spot up at Miller's that there's a nice little current tongue coming off a little shoal. And my goodness, they are always rising on the other side of the current tongue. And I'm like, do I need a 42-foot leader to cast out there? To get it over the current tongue. And it's not a fast current tongue. I mean, it doesn't take much to mess up your drift because you got to drift it for so far. But I mean, they're over there just rising all day long in the slow frog water. And I think it's because, well, one, that's where there's food over there. But two, they know that we can't cast over there. We can't make it happen.
Yeah, they never get hit over there, do they?
No, but when they do, and I was waiting up there one day with a client, and I was just starting to learn the river a couple of years ago. And we saw a nice fish midging, and I told her to cast to it. And I mean, she caught that fish. It was probably an 18-incher, big wild rainbow. And I mean, it's still one of my biggest favorite fish of my career guiding because of what it meant. There are bigger fish in the river than that fish, but boy, did it mean a lot to us because, I mean, it was the odds were the balls were not in our court that day, but it worked out, like the fish definitely had the upper hand. So I'm always amazed by how many fish I'm spooking out in just nothing water. And I mean, all the time when I'm waiting out there, when I'm on the boat. So that would be my answer as well. Edges and frog water.
Edges and frog water.
The thing that you would think you'd be catching bullfrogs in, not trout. Some people say, what does frog water mean? I'm like, well, that's where you would, if we went frogging, that's where you would expect to see a bullfrog.
Right.
On a trout stream. Believe it or not, all of our trout streams have frog water.
The interesting thing is how much those fish are moving in and out of what we would normally think of as the good water, the stuff that we want to look at, that really nice water, and that frog water. There's days I'll come through and every fish is in the good water. It's real straightforward. It's just throw over into that nice water and there's a fish. And there's other days you're thrown in that nice water for hours and you maybe have two fish and you're like, what is going on? And then you kind of, like Pat said, maybe you go over to the bank to take a break or something. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's 1,000 fish sitting over here in this frog water. What are they doing over here today? And for whatever reason, that's where they are that day. And there's no rhyme or reason from one day to the next. It could be same weather conditions, same anything, and one day they're out in the middle and the other day they're on that edge over there in that frog water.
That's so true.
It's like the I-75 rest area or something over there. They're just hanging out,
Yeah.
Waiting for the water to come up. They're just taking a break, taking a breather.
Eating some midges. That goes back to the old adage, fish where they are, not where they ain't.
For sure.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the biggest fish I've ever caught over there. It is probably 18-ish. Nothing any bigger than that. And I want to say that, I've had all these good fish on and lost them, but I don't know that I really have over there. I have in a lot of other places. Lost fish that I thought would have been the fish that makes a day, It only takes one big fish to make a really good day for folks, me included. I mean, we can go all day and not catch but one fish sometimes, and I would be okay, as long as it was the right fish. But we ask all our guests this this question. It's not the final one. We got one more to go after this. And I want the folks listening out there to know we all have this in common. This is the same issue that we all have. And I want to stick with the clinch here. And I guess we'll start with David. Tell us about the one that got away.
Man, I'd be curious what Pat says because he may piggyback off my story. I'm not sure, but there was a day we were streamer fishing. It was in the winter. I've had this goal probably 3 winters in a row now. Going into the winter, it's like, okay, I'm going to probably have a little time off, from guiding. I'm not going to work 5 days a week. I might only work 2 days a week or whatever it is. and we're going to fish hard, right? And then we're going to hit the clinch hard. And my goal was to catch a big brown. And when I say a big brown, I mean like a really big fish, like a mega fish, a big fish on a streamer on the clinch. Because I've caught some big browns on the clinch, but I've never caught a really big giant streamer fish on that river in particular. And we started out, and it's funny because every winter, I say I'm going to do this a bunch, and every year it ends up being like 1 or 2 days that we actually try to make this happen. So I've got all of 5 days towards this goal so far, and I've got a bunch of those ones that got away that are starting to add up at this point. But the first day that we did it, we were probably, I don't know, 300 yards into the float. I mean, we weren't very far from the boat ramp at all, and I'm bombing these casts off to the left side of the boat. I think the boat was about the middle of the river and coming up to the top of this shoal. And I'm probably 60, 70, maybe even 80 feet from the boat. I mean, way out there, and stripping this gold and tan drunken disorderly that I had tied like the night before. I mean, it swam so good. I still have that fly, I think. And this really nice brown. And for the challenge that I had set for myself, this fish would have cracked 20 inches. So I would have been like, hey, it's big enough. It works, It wasn't the true giant that I was looking for, but it was a really nice fish. And I'm, like I said, 60 feet, 70 feet out from the boat. And I give this hard strip set into this fish, and I'm tight for a second. And this fish the rod starts shaking, and Pat's going, oh, and he's all excited. And it was one of those ones that, I never really even had that chance to fight that fish. It was about a second and a half or two. It was long enough that I know I had that fish hooked up and buttoned up, but it was so far from the boat, stripping as fast as I could. I could not stay tight to that fish, and it just shook that streamer free. And whether I got, a bad strip set because he was so far out, maybe had some stretch in the line on that strip set, I don't know. But the rest of that day was for me a little anticlimactic because I had that opportunity so early in the day, and I caught a couple nice fish, never caught a big brown that day. But later on that day, we would actually see the fish that are in my dreams that I do dream about, that I do think this is the one I want out of that river. And I don't know if Pat's going to tell that story or not, if he's got another one. He's probably got another one, but we saw some big fish that day. And I've since had a couple other days where I've had some really big fish swing and either miss, or I've stung on the strip set and just didn't hook up with. And I'm kind of at that stage where I've caught some big fish on nymphs and midges, and I really want that giant streamer fish on that river in particular, because I've caught some big streamer fish other places, but I want that on that river. And when I say big fish, I'm talking, 24, 25 and up. If it was a 28 or a 30, I'd be real happy,
Right.
So
right.
That's my goal, and I'm going to keep getting out there my 1 or 2 days a year until it happens, which maybe a few years down the road, you just never know. But that's the one that keeps me coming back.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. I'm surprised we didn't see any bigger fish than what we did. And for y'all listening out there, a 20-inch fish is a big fish anywhere you go, unless you're, somewhere out of the continental United States for sure.
Yep.
In the trout anyway. So, a 2-footer is something really special, and anything above that is, it really is.
Yeah.
And anything above that's, icing on the cake. And you could say, I got one bigger than that, but don't poo-poo a 16, 17, 18, 19, 20-inch fish either. And you're not doing that. I'm not saying you are. I'm just saying that, that's your goal, is to get that 2-footer or more. And that's your big fish. But a 20-inch fish is nothing.
It's a big fish. Yeah.
It is. It's a different animal. Now, when you get up to 24, that's an even different animal. Anything bigger than that's even a different animal. So
those big fish, I always think about, what have those big fish seen? What a story they could tell, and how I'm just grateful to be a little bit of part of their story and get to snap a picture and get to watch that big, beautiful fish swim back to the depths of the Clinch River. And, I'm super happy about that for sure.
Yeah. What if you've caught that fish when it was like a 10-inch fish and you threw it back, and then you caught it 2 years later and it's 20 something, and you wouldn't even know it, because it'd be a whole different fish.
Yeah.
At that time. But All right, Pat, let's hear your one that got away story. I can't wait for this.
Yeah, so I feel like I have to finish the story. I was debating about telling this story. I got another funny one too that David Knapp is gonna love. I actually almost shared it with you guys the other day. But so we're floating down the river and we're in my boat and David is rowing and I'm stripping probably like a 6-inch drunk and disorderly streamer. It's a sculpin pattern. And so he's got me kind of on river right, casting to my left side, my strong side, and I'm just casting as far as I can, and I'm stripping, and that streamer comes over a shoal. The shoal's kind of going down the river, kind of at an angle, but kind of downstream and upstream, and it's coming over this shoal, and right around as it hits the top of it, I come tight on a fish. And we just saw it for a moment. So, I mean, I didn't really fight it, but man, I stuck it for a moment and I felt pretty good about it. And I mean, it was a big old brown trout. And, we're pretty good at estimating the size of fish because we do this often. People ask me how big that fish is. And I'm like, about 17. Or I can look at a picture and be like, that fish is, that fish is 22 inches and be pretty correct. I don't need that little ball that they have the fly shop that you can, use.
Oh yeah, I've seen those things. Yeah,
you don't have to.
Yeah,
it'd be cool because you can see like the estimated weight, but like I'm pretty good at figuring out. Now muskie, that's different, but big old brown trout. Well, I don't know, David. I don't know if you remember, but 2 minutes down the road, maybe.
Or yeah, at most. Yeah.
I mean, 50 yards down the river, 30 yards down the river. I mean, close enough. It could have been the same fish, but it wasn't. I stick another one. So. Same thing, and I lose him, and I think we estimated those fish like, I want to say like 28 to 30 inches, and that's very possible. Those fish exist in that river for sure, but I would say with no doubt an upper 20-inch brown trout on both of those fish. I mean,
for sure, they were both big fish.
Absolutely, just giant brown trout. So that hurt, and guess how many times that's happened since? None. 0. So that was like 3 years ago. That was when they were eating the sulfurs in December.
Yep.
It was early January. It was like January 4th or 5th.
Yeah.
January 6th, something like that.
Yeah. There were sulfurs coming off and fish eating them.
There was something in the water. I don't know what it was, but something was in the water. They were feeding like crazy on streamers and sulfurs. I mean, it was a great day. I caught a really nice rainbow that day. But the other one is David and I had an opportunity to go fishing with Dr. Matt Lewis. He is a fisheries professor at LMU, Lincoln Memorial University. He was at Auburn. He wrote the Red Eye Bass book in Alabama, and then also the Fly Fishing Alabama book. Good friend of mine. So we were able to work it out. We've actually fished twice together, and he doesn't live. We live about I live an hour south of the Clinch, and he lives about an hour north of the Clinch. So we met, we fished, we did really well. We caught a bunch of fish. We had a lot of fun. Well, at one point, I'm fishing my 6-wick glass rod, and I'm throwing a dry dropper with a pheasant tail, and I hook a nice rainbow, not a giant rainbow, but a nice rainbow, and I'm fighting this fish, and I go, hey, this is crazy. If my clients looked up this fish right now, it would take them 30 minutes to bring it in. And as soon as I said, I know I just said the dumbest thing in the world as I'm bringing in a nice fish. I mean, I knew it. I knew it was going to happen. It's just like the guy today said, I can't believe I haven't seen a snake in the Smokies with you. And then I almost stepped on a snake today. I mean, it just happens.
Yeah.
And about as soon as I'm like, yeah, I can't, my clients would take so long to bring this in. What do you know? That fish broke off. And I mean, we still laugh. I was going to share it with you guys last Friday, but I decided not to because I didn't want to get laughed at the whole time.
Or jinx it.
Yes.
Yeah, no doubt. So,
that'll be worse.
That was just me being silly, kind of. But, I mean, it was just like, man, and it just shows you that, don't think about an Instagram picture. Don't think about sending it to your fishing buddies. Don't think about any of that stuff. Don't think about how you're going to hold it. Don't just focus on the fish. Fight the fish. Fight them hard. Don't fight them too long. These fish on the Clinch, I'm convinced they will fight to their death if you gave them the chance to. If you had them on 8X and you had them on a 2-8 and you let them fight for 30 minutes, those fish would literally die because they fight so hard. So it just shows me that as an angler, we need to focus on fighting the fish and getting that fish in the net take good care of it as well, so it can live another day. So someone else can catch it.
I totally agree with that. It's fun whenever you catch the same fish that somebody caught 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yep.
And you've got a fish big enough where let's just snap a photo of it.
Yep.
And then you're like, I'll be darned. That's the same fish.
Last year in September, I was up there a lot and on low water, and one of my clients caught a really nice rainbow and on a midge, that midge that Dave was talking about earlier. And I go to get the fly out, and I'm like, wait a minute, there's 2 of them in there. So that fish broke off either one of David's flies or one of my flies, because we were both on the river a bunch over that 2-week period. And I was like, hey, congratulations, you caught this really nice fish that someone else couldn't. Like that's pretty cool. And I got a fly back. It might have been one of David's flies, but I didn't give it back to him. I just put it in my box. So,
All right. So one more question here. But before I ask this question, Pat, this is going to be of you. So this is another question that we ask everybody. And to me, this is one of the most important questions in the podcast. But we're only asking Pat. We're not going to ask David, because David eats way too healthy for me. And I'll tell you how I know that. Number one, he doesn't eat anything out of the package, I don't think. And maybe he does, but I haven't seen it yet.
I snuck one of those pretzels the other day. I didn't tell anybody.
Did you?
I saw you.
You saw that? I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Well,
I was going to call his wife.
So I'll tell you something else on David. I'm sitting up front of the boat the other day, and I'm watching out of the corner of my eye, and he grabs those vanilla Oreos, and he flips them over on the back, and he looks at it for about a millisecond, and then just flips it back over and sets it back down. I don't know what he read on the back of that package. Whatever it was, it must not have been good. And don't tell me what it was, because I don't want to know.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we're just going to, and Pat, you ended up taking those home. Hopefully you took care of that.
Yes.
Hopefully you took care of those. Good. You're a good man. At least you didn't flip it over, read it, and put it back down. Oh, so the podcast has evolved over time for us. And I like to include things that are not fishing. So, but become an experience of the trip. And what I mean by that is when we go to a river up in Upper East Tennessee, we have one barbecue place that we go to. When we go over to the Little Red River, there's a certain restaurant that we have to eat at least once. Whenever we go to the White, stay down by the Buffalo, we eat the world's second greatest pizza, whatever that means. So anyway, Pat, give us an idea of the good places to eat around the Clinch and why you would recommend those places.
Yeah, I got 2 of them. So the first one would be a breakfast spot. It's called Valley Quick Pack, and it is just a stone's throw from the 61 boat ramp, so the lower ramp that most people would use. So it's pretty easy to go meet Clark, meet him at a certain time, go run by the Valley Quick Pack. So you go in there, and I mean, you don't want to wear your Sunday's best because it's going to smell like biscuit and eggs, and but it's one of those places that just incredible breakfast food, all the stuff that's not good for you, which is all the stuff that I love. So David, Knapp, not your place, my friend. But really great food, great lunch. I thought about doing lunches there and stuff when I'm there, but the reality is I'm always trying not to be late, and so I just grab my lunches. Grab my lunches the night before after working, an 18-hour day. I'd rather do that than try to wake up 30 more minutes, and the kids always need something, or my wife, or there's always something I need to do as a husband and as a dad in the morning. So to me, it makes more sense to not use them. But great place. Kind of tough to get your boat in there. Not horrible, but if it's crowded and you're not someone that can back a boat up with a lot of confidence and a lot of people staring at you, it could be a little intimidating for sure. So just know that if you have your boat, it's you want to have some confidence there.
Where is that place?
Yeah, so if you leave a 61 boat ramp, instead of going left to go on the highway, you go to the right, and then it's 120 yards down.
That little small road there on the right back there. Yep.
Okay.
And Clark talks that place up too. And if Clark talks it up, it's good, because Clark, if you ever want to know all the good places to eat, man, he's got all the good places there in Clinton scoped out. He knows them all. So he's always like, oh, you need to eat breakfast over here. It's real good.
Clark and I have a perch dinner in our future sometime.
Yeah.
I tell you that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be fun. So
That would be fun.
it's on the corner of Sinking Springs Road and Brushy Valley Road.
That's it.
And
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's just right down the road from the boat ramp. So I really like that place. And then the other place is Clinch River Brewery or Brewing up there by the Weir Dam and the Weir Pool on the upper river. It's a
Really?
it's a really neat spot right on the river. There's a lot of those walking trails. TVA has a bunch of walking trails, and it's kind of neat. They'll have, I don't know if people are or they like trees and stuff and plants, but they'll have like the black walnut orchard, and then they'll have the poplar, and then,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So it's a really neat spot up there, and then they have good parking, good food. You can get a beer, you can get burgers and wings. I've heard good things about the shrimp and grits. I haven't had that.
Oh, I love shrimp and grits.
Yep. And they got some good outdoor seating. They have a koi pond with some trout in it. Someone was telling me the other day, I heard that some midges were coming off in the koi pond, and the trout were eating it. And they pull the water out of Clear Creek, and then dump it back in the Clinch. So it's Clinch River type water. So they got some trout in there, some koi in there. So pretty neat place. Got good parking. Want to check your hours there.
Are they right across the street from the parking lot at the Weir then?
Just upriver from there. So they're just a little bit past
up towards the dam from the Weir Dam, just a little ways. I mean, a little ways. It's just right there.
Yeah.
And they're on the right side of the road going toward the dam?
Yep. So just past Clear Creek.
Huh.
Not too far from the canoe launch up there.
Oh, okay. Where all the dog poop is, the canoe launch up there, where people take their dogs and just let them run wild. Yeah.
Yep. So those are the two places I'd recommend if you're in the area. And we tell most people to, stay in Clinton or Oak Ridge. They got everything you need. But I like that Clinton area.
Yeah, so do I. I do like it up there. It's got good access to 75 right there. You can get back over to 40 if you want to. You can get into Knoxville fairly quick. You can go in the back way to Knoxville down through Carnes, and that way there's a lot of good areas there.
There's just a bunch of public lands, and the elk population in Tennessee is not far from there. And
that's true. Yeah,
the Cumberland Mountains, and there's a lot of land that we can play on up in that area. So
there's Jeep trails up around the Clinch too.
Yeah,
aren't there? Yeah,
not too far. I think it's from Monroe County, mostly Anderson County.
Well, what do y'all say we close this thing out, guys? I think this has been a really good one.
I agree.
It's been really fun for me. So thanks for joining us on this episode. Feel free to share it with your friends and your fishing partners. Hit the like, click the follow buttons. Sign up for the Southeastern Fly newsletter. It's available wherever you're listening to this podcast right now. When you get a chance, give us a positive review wherever you're listening to this one. And so who were our guests today on this episode about fly fishing the Clinch River in Tennessee? Like I said, the first is a longtime friend. He's the owner of the Trout Zone Anglers. You can find him at troutzoneanglers.com. David, really appreciate you stopping by for the fourth time.
Thanks for having me again. It's always a good time.
All right, this other one has been featured on the podcast Dads on the Fly. He's a guide at Trout Zone Anglers. You can book Pat at troutzoneanglers.com. Pat, Tully, appreciate you stopping by and joining us.
Yep. Thank you, David. Appreciate it.
Really nice job, guys. Just great fish with you again, but always good to see you, good to text and talk with you and see you at the ramp when I can. It's just really appreciate you all and the friendship. It's been good. Sure has.
Yeah, I agree.
You just listened to Pat Tully and David Knapp, fly fishing the Clinch River in Tennessee on Southeastern Fly. See you next time.